Today we are talking about automating your boring tasks, and I'm about to show you it's much simpler than you think. You can eliminate almost every task from your life, but only if you follow these steps in order. Skip one of these steps or do them out of order, and you'll waste hours building automations that don't matter. Or worse, you'll burn out before you finish your first one. And the first step is the one most people skip because it feels like a waste of time, but it's the reason everything else works. My name is Jordan. I've been building automations for 10 years. I've taught myself 7 programming languages. I've built automations that save my own business 20 plus hours a week. And I've done the same for clients who literally transformed their business with a single automation. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what tasks to automate first and how to make Claude Code do it for you. And I'm even going to do a live automation build at the end. Let's go. Okay, this first step is completely counterintuitive. If you skip it and are somehow able to build your first automation, they will very likely be worthless. What you need to do is you need to make 3 lists. The first one is things that you hate to do, like you can't stand them. Every single time you come across them, you're like, I do not want to do this. You need to make a list of those. And then you need to put them on a scale from 1 to 10, of 1 being the least amount of hate, 10 being you hate this thing so much, even to the point that maybe you don't do it. The second list that you need to make is what I call the struggle list. And that is tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis that you struggle with. Maybe they're not one of the things that you're best at. It's not in your wheelhouse. It's not a skill that you have, but it's necessary. You have to do it, and it's slow. So come up with a list of things that you do every single week that you struggle to do that aren't in your wheelhouse, and write them down and put them on a scale from 1 to kind of struggle, all the way up to 10 to like really, really struggle with. Okay, and now the third list is that you need to create a time list. The things that take the most time in your day, in your week, the activities that are most time consuming for you. You need to put them down in order from 1 to 10, 1 being less time consuming, 10 being the most time consuming. And then the last list that you need to make is the tasks that you complete that are done with a machine or a program. And if it is done on a computer, it has a much higher likelihood of being able to be automated. Now what you need to do is you need to look for common tasks across all of those different lists. So the point of this is not to have isolated lists of each of these. It's to see where the same thing is coming up multiple times. So you're going to take each of the items that show up multiple times and you're going to put them on another list, and then you're going to add up the scores from each of the lists. So how much you hate it, how much time it takes, and how much you struggle with it, and how likely it is to be automatable. And once you have this list, you'll be ready to move on to step 2. Okay, now this step might seem very obvious, which is pick the right project to work on. It seems intuitive, right? But here's the truth. If you pick wrong, you are very likely to quit at some point when you run into the challenges that you're going to face when building these automations. Because if you're not highly motivated to kind of eliminate this project or this to-do from your to-do list on a weekly basis, then when you run into challenges, you're going to find it hard to continue to press through the walls that you're going to hit as you're learning to build these automations with Claude Code. So it's very important that you are highly motivated to eliminate or automate this little to-do or this task out of your life, because it's going to help you when you run into those walls, when you run into bugs as you're building these automations. And the second part, making sure that it requires a lot of time every single week, is because when you pick that one as your first task or as your first automation that you are going to build, you are going to, not only are you going to be motivated to get it done, but also once you get it done, you are going to free up an enormous amount of time every single week that you can now reinvest into building more automations. So for example, let's say that you have something that takes you 20 hours a week and you absolutely hate doing it. That checks both boxes, because first, you're going to be highly motivated to get rid of it, to get it out of your life. And number 2, it's taking up 20 hours a week. So once you automate that, think about it. You are going to be able to reinvest those 20 hours on the second item in the list. So now you're going to be able to go and automate the thing that takes you 10 hours a week, and you'll have 20 extra hours a week to knock that next one off the list. Not only are you going to free yourself up some time to create more automations, but you're also going to be in a better mood because you're not doing the thing that you hate the most. So you can see that this just compounds and gets better and better and better. Let me tell you what happened when I picked my first project. I didn't know anything about Python. I didn't know anything about code, but I found out that you were able to scrape the internet to get data from it, and Python was the way to do it. And so I had a project that I was like, I absolutely need to be able to scrape this data. I was so excited about it, and I couldn't do it manually. It would just take too much time. I was swamped in school. I couldn't do it, but I really, really wanted to find a way to do it. Python was that way. And I ran into wall after wall after wall after wall as I was trying to learn Python by myself, didn't have anybody teaching me. But I was so motivated to get it done that I kept with it, that I didn't get overly discouraged, not to the point that I quit. And this leads us into step 3, which is the mindset. Now, when I started, nobody told me that I was going to run into hundreds of walls. I didn't know what to expect. And I was honestly a little bit taken off guard. I was like, is this actually for me? Like, can I actually teach myself to do programming? But that was overcome by the fact that I was so excited about the project, which was great. But it would have been so much easier if somebody would have just sat me down and said, look, here's what's going to happen. You're going to run into 100 walls or 200 walls or 1,000 walls. And that is not unique to you. That's not a rough start. That is the process. And when you set your expectations to know that that's what it's going to be, that you are going to run into walls, and you just set a number in your mind of how many walls you're going to run into, that is going to be so valuable, and it's going to dramatically increase the chances that you succeed at building automations, because you're not going to get disappointed the first time that you hit a wall or that you hit an error or that you fail in building an automation, because you know that that is just part of the process. Now, something that I want you to think about is, especially in the idea of automating, let's take back our example of something that costs you 20 hours per week. Now, if you spent, let's say that you got stuck for 2 hours on one little hiccup, on one little wall, well, you could spend 10 weeks of getting hit up against a 2-hour holdup before it would equate to the 1 week that you spend in doing that task manually. So give yourself some room, give yourself some time to fail. If it takes 2 hours to overcome one thing, that's okay. In the long term, you are going to save so much time by fighting through those 2-hour holdups, because you're going to free up 20 hours every single week. The long-term impact of this is extraordinary. You're freeing up the most valuable resource that you have, which is time. And you know what? There's a satisfaction that comes from pushing through that pain, from fighting through those walls, that is hard to explain and is part of the process. It's part of the joy of the process as well. And here's the truth. I still get stuck. I've been doing this for 10 years and it's getting easier. Claude Code is making it so easy to build these automations, but you still sometimes run into hiccups. I do, and I've been doing it for a long time. It is part of the process. Now, what you need to do is give yourself the grace, give yourself permission to make 100 mistakes, to make 200 mistakes, and to set the expectation that that is what's going to happen, that you're going to run into 100 walls. And if you do that, you're going to be one of the people that doesn't quit, that makes it through and starts automating your life one step at a time until you have a lot more free time than other people, because you were willing, you set the expectation, and you knew that that was part of the process. I can almost guarantee that you will succeed with automation, that you will free up hours and hours and hours every single week. And beyond that, you're going to gain a confidence that you can push past those walls, and it's going to allow so much freedom into your life when your expectations are that you're going to run into walls and that you can fight through them. What I want you to do is pull out a piece of paper and write down, I will get stuck 100 times. Set that expectation right now, and you are going to significantly increase the chances that you succeed. And I know this because I've lived it. I've done it through 7 different programming languages, and every single time, it's what actually made it possible. This is the crux of the whole process. If you do this, you are going to succeed. If you set the right expectations, it is going to work for you. Because I'm not somebody special, and I was able to make it work. And you have the tailwinds. You pick the right project. If you do this, your life will change. Now, let me give you one more story before we move on to the technical aspect of this video. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say that it'll change your life, or it'll change the life of your clients, or it'll change the life of your business. One of the first automations that I built was for a truck dealership. They were a small truck dealership, kind of a startup, and the 2 guys were mostly sales guys, and they spent much of their time out on the lot selling cars. Now, their struggle was that they needed more trucks to sell, but they didn't have enough time to go out and find the inventory. It was the chicken and an egg problem. They came to me and they said, "Is there anything that we can do about this? We need to get more inventory." I said, "Well, where do you get your inventory?" And they said, "This website." So I looked at the website and I built an automation that looked through the website almost every single second of every single day, looking for trucks that fit their criteria, the criteria that they gave me. And I was able to continuously look for trucks that fit the criteria. When it met the criteria, it would grab the URL and it would send them a text directly to their phone with the link to the car, and they would call up the seller of the car immediately. So they were able to get to those cars first before anybody else. Now, the problem was that this was difficult. There were a lot of edge cases, a lot of errors that I ran into. I didn't have a computer to run it on, so I figured that out. And the first few days were just errors, 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 errors. And then it started getting a little bit better. But almost every day or every other day, I'd come in and the computer would have stopped running because it hit an error. And I would have to figure out why the error was occurring. Then I would make some tweaks to the code, and then a few more days, and it started getting spaced farther and farther apart. And eventually, it just ran smoothly. And they literally had people calling them up. Other truck dealerships call them up and say, "What are you guys doing? We can't get to any of the trucks. You were always there first." And the crazy thing is that they weren't spending any time searching for trucks. The trucks came to them, and they were beating out every other dealership in the entire state. And the other dealerships were complaining to them, wondering how it happened for them. So their business started thriving. They were able to get the right inventory and sell more trucks without having to worry about getting inventory. And so what I'm saying here is that there were a lot of problems that I ran into, a lot of walls that I hit as I built that first automation for somebody else. And in the end, it was wildly worth it. It made a significant amount of money for this truck dealership. And if I would have stopped at the first or second error, they would have missed out on so much opportunity in their business. And so it's well worth pushing through those walls and fighting that tendency to say, okay, maybe this isn't for me, or this doesn't happen to other people. It happens to everybody. Okay, now this brings us to step 4, which is actually the technical know-how of Claude. Now, let me tell you something. I wish so bad that Claude existed when I first started building automations. This makes building automations so much easier. But there are a few things that you need to know in order to make this possible for you. Okay, and the first thing is that you need to let Claude drive. So you are really just an orchestrator, and you are going to ask Claude for a lot of advice, especially at the very beginning. So use Claude as somewhat of a mentor to you as you're building the workflows, and give it the freedom that it needs to kind of take the reins and show you how it's supposed to be done. This is possible. You just need to enter it with that. You need to go into it with that mindset that Claude is your teacher and the builder. And if you do that, you are going to learn at a much faster rate. So go into it with the mindset that you are going to basically follow Claude's lead and ask Claude to lead and explain to you what it's doing so that you can start to get better and better and better as you learn from Claude. The other thing that you need to do is you need to ask Claude frequently where the holes are. You need to ask it to fill in the gaps that exist in the project currently, because it is going to have great suggestions on how to make the project better, but you have to ask it. It's not going to do that naturally. So you should frequently be asking Claude, how can this be better? Or where are the gaps and how do we fill them? And then let Claude go and fill those gaps. The other thing that is really important is context, and you need to ask Claude frequently if it is missing any context in order to do its job at the peak productivity. The other thing that you need to do is you need to ask Claude to be critical of your own thinking. So, Claude out of the box is probably going to be polite, it's not going to challenge you, but you need to tell Claude to challenge you, to be brutally honest, so that you are learning what logic works and what logic doesn't work. But Claude needs to be given permission to do that. So tell it to be brutally honest with you and to check the logic that you are entering into the process. And then the last mindset piece that you need is to iterate. That you need to take what Claude gives you and work with Claude to iterate and know that the first pass is probably not going to be the best. So when you get done with, or what you think is done with, maybe a minimum viable product or the first iteration of the project, you need to ask Claude, what can we do to make this better, and iterate and iterate and iterate. And then you're going to find as you use it, there are going to be some holes, and you can work with Claude to fill those holes. Okay, so now we're really going to get into the nitty gritty. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you the steps that we need to go through to have the fastest path to getting Claude Code working for you. And then we're going to do a live example that shows you how we're going to extract information from a PDF using Claude as an automation builder. And we're going to get to that right now. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make this process as beginner friendly as possible, as simple as possible. And the way to do that is by downloading Visual Studio Code. So you'll come to code.visualstudio.com and you'll download it for your computer. And once it's downloaded, you're going to have a screen, and you open it, you're going to have a screen that looks just like this. This is Visual Studio Code. So the first thing that you need to do once you get this downloaded, once you get it downloaded and opened, is you need to go to the extensions and you need to look for Claude Code. And it's usually going to be the very top one. So you come here, and I already have it installed. You'll install it, and then you'll have to log in. You'll need a pro account for Claude Code to work here. But once you have it installed, you're going to come over here, and you are going to now open up a folder. Now we haven't created a folder, so we're going to do that right here on the desktop. Let's do here YouTube demo right there. And then we're going to come here and we're going to open that folder in Visual Studio Code. So we're going to go to desktop, and then we're going to look for a YouTube demo right here. We're going to open it. So now you'll see that we're in that folder right here. And now you'll see that there's this little icon right here, which is our Claude Code icon. And we're going to click that to open up Claude Code. And then you'll see that there's this little kind of ChatGPT looking interface that you're going to use. So the cool thing is in Visual Studio Code, when we have this folder open, Claude Code has access to that folder on our computer. So right now it's empty, as we know. If we open this in Finder, we'll see that there's nothing in there, and there's nothing in here as well, because it's the same folder. But we're going to start creating files inside of this folder, and Claude Code can do it for us. That's one of the big benefits, is that it can hold context on our computer, and it saves us a lot of time of explaining what we want Claude Code to do when we start a new session. So here we're going to say, can you help me make an automation that will allow me to put a PDF in this directory, and then we can use OCR to pull out the line items from that PDF and put them in a CSV. So here we go, it's thinking. We're going to let it look at what's in the folder, and now it's going to check Python. So now it's asking us what kind of PDFs we're processing: invoices, receipts. We're going to say invoice for this particular case. We're going to do text-based for this, and submit answers. So now it's going to start doing all the work. Yes, we can do that. Now you'll see that there's a file that showed up here, and we'll see it in our Finder as well, that it's starting to modify the folder. And now you see it created a virtual environment, which you don't need to know about, but that's what it did. Then it's building this Python file. So you see extract invoices was created. So now what we're going to do is telling us that we need to drop an invoice PDF into our folder. So we're going to do that. I have an invoice right here in downloads. We're going to take this and we're going to pop it into YouTube demo. And then we're going to say, okay, can you please run this process for the invoice .pdf, and we can even misspell it, and it's still going to pick up exactly what we want it to do. So now we have line items.csv, and sure enough, it picked out the correct line items. It picked out 10. There are 10 in the invoice. So we can now open this up, line items.csv, and compare it to our PDF. So let's open up the PDF. We'll do these side by side. So we see the invoice, the PDF right here. We have strategy consulting, and sure enough, strategy consulting 200, 400, all the way down to post-launch support at 3, quantity 100 and 300. So we just turned this CSV or this invoice into a CSV within minutes, and we let Claude Code kind of run it. Now there are tons of other things that we can do with this. We can add this so that it runs automatically. We can basically do whatever we want with this. And whatever upload mechanism, you could upload it to Slack, you could upload it to Telegram, and we can make this thing work by connecting it to whatever tools we need to. But you can see how easy this is to build these automations. And if we open this up, like look at all these lines of code that it just built, and it just works. And one of the beautiful things about using Claude Code is that if it doesn't work, it will automatically detect what the error was and it will fix it. It's self-healing. And so literally this is all you need to do. You download, I mean, you need to have all the mindset pieces in place like we talked about throughout this video. If you don't have those, it's really going to be a difficult process. But once you get past that, and when you really just get to the technical aspects where you just download VS Code, Visual Studio Code, you download Claude Code, you make a pro account, and then you just start talking to it. And this is really the process. Now it can get a lot more complicated than this, but this is the basic idea, and this is why like this would probably take hours. Even somebody who's good with Python, this would take hours just to write this, and Claude did it in just seconds. So it really is a beautiful time to be building these automations, to be learning these automations, and you can do this. I mean, this is a really small example, right? This invoice. But if you did this manually, if you just had to enter this into a CSV, this would take you, not super long, but if you do this multiple times a week, you're going to be saving a lot of time, and you just built it in like 5 minutes. Super, super convenient.